Yes, sir. For Senate Appropriations, March 18th upon adjournment. Senator Hicks. Senator Guru.
Here.
Senator Kinski.
Here.
Senator Steinmetz. Chairman Perkins.
Here.
You have a quorum.
File 145, and what we have in there is that there was a standing committee amendment to add 1.5 million
Yes,
in
sir.
there, and that was mostly the county clerks believed that they were going to need support, financial support in order to have the runoff election. And so we're here to talk about the appropriation. Nobody's here to present, but I think we know
Mr.
what the issue
Chairman,
is.
Senator Beitman was trying to round up his two girls and he was going to be here just as soon as he got them. This might be them now.
This might be him. There we are.
You didn't come without your two girls, did you?
Bring in your moral support. Just come right up here, Senator Beitman, and if they want to come up and sit next to you, they certainly can.
Girls have been watching Senate proceedings well enough. They might be able to present the bill for you.
So Senator Beitman, we're just here to talk about the appropriations. So just go ahead and take us into the appropriation was $1.5 million and let us know how you came up with that number and what it's for and why we need to have it in this bill.
Could you turn your mic on and pull it towards you? There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I believe that number came from the County Clerks Association during the committee hearing, and that's the number they went with. I don't have any more details as to what the breakdown of that cost is. County Commissioners Association also expressed interest in having an appropriation put on the bill so it's not an unfunded mandate. Those were the concerns that we heard from.
Well, Senator Beitman, on the bill, I mean, as I'm thinking about it, we just had the election season last year. Unless there's I was trying to think of what election might occur between now and 2022. I mean, did you guys have any discussion about that? I was just thinking about the appropriation, why we would need an appropriation in this biennium. Because the biennium would end on July 1st of 2022.
Mr. Chairman, that is a good question. I can get back to you on that one. I'll have to shoot some emails out, but you're right. The focus of the bill and when I originally drafted it was to get us ready for the 22 cycle, because there will be, as the bill will be hopefully amended tomorrow, to take the legislature out. We're just looking at the top fives, and then we're going to have a U.S. Congress race. So we're going to have possibly 6 races where we could see a runoff possibility in 2022. If you go out to 2024, there's maybe only one. So to get this thing going and to make it most useful, we need it in 22. I want to give the clerks what they need and the counties what they need to be able to pull this off. And to take a big load off their plate would be to take the legislature out of it. So we just focus like most states. And then I've gone back and researched what other states do with these runoff elections. And our neighbor, South Dakota, does just governor and the federal offices for runoffs.
Okay, and so I'm thinking, so you have the runoff election. So you'd have the primary.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have the primary, and that would be it's in August, right? And so then if nobody gets, if nobody gets 50% of the election in the primary, then we have a runoff election?
Correct.
And when would that be in your bill?
In my bill, the way it is now, Mr. Chairman, after talking to the clerks, I went with May. I bumped up the primary to May to coincide with any municipal bond elections that first Tuesday in May to save money. I was hoping that would be a money saver. Turns out they still didn't like that at the committee hearing. And then when I went back and looked at what other states like South Dakota do with these runoff elections, South Dakota, for instance, has theirs in June, their primary election in June, and their runoff in August. And I think that's something that would fit right in with Wyoming's schedule as well. So I think if it does make it through general file, I would bring a second reading amendment to change our dates. Because we heard in committee that people like to campaign in the summer months, and May is a little short. It's an option. We could also just do the top fives and the feds in May, and then everybody else where the current runoff is in August. Keep that date, that third Tuesday in August. That's a possibility as well, and just move up the big guys to May. And if they win outright, it's over. If they win 50% plus one, it's over. If they need a runoff, then we've already got that date set on the third Tuesday in August for the runoff and the rest of the primary elections.
Go ahead.
That's
Mr.
an
Vice
option.
President.
If we put the legislature in, that would just cost even more because then you're running 2 elections
Correct.
prior to that. But and I know I've seen the amendment, I like the amendment to take the legislature out. So we're really only talking worst case scenario is 8 races, assuming that our top 5 and 3 federally elected would be all contested. And so the worst case scenario would be 8 in a runoff election, which is highly unlikely. So I just run through the math. Even if you assumed all 8 of those, it could be $122,000 out of $1.5 million for 98 races. You take the 90 legislative races out of there, you're down to 3 feds and 5 top 5 elected. Use the same price as $122,000.
Yeah, so it's mailing and printing and maybe some overtime. I mean, is there do you know anything more about the expenses that they would have?
Mr. Chairman, they didn't go into any detail on what the expenses would be, so I'd have to reach back out.
I would assume it's just the cost of running an election. So
Mr. Chairman.
let's go to Senator Steinmetz because she raised her hand.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just wondered if Senator Beitman, that price was with the state legislature included in the bill. And so if we run the amendment to take that out, that ought to be a lot more efficient use of our money. Would you agree with that, or?
Mr. Chairman, I would agree. I think taking the legislative races out not only solves the redistricting problem with 2022, it also, there are, every 2 years, there's probably been at least 2 or 4 Senate races that would go to state Senate races that could have possibly gone to a runoff, and the same in the House. So you could be looking at running up to 4 runoffs every 2-year cycle. So that would get rid of that problem.
Okay, anything else, Senator Steinmetz? Mr. Vice Chair.
Mr. Chairman, just on the question of cost, a question for the sponsor. Why would you not keep the primary where it is and then find out whether there's any runoffs even necessary? So you keep an August primary, and if you don't have a split that would necessitate a runoff, you don't incur the expense. And if you do, you just have I don't know why Georgia did theirs in January, but you'd find out right away whether you even need an election, and you'd save one whole election cycle out of the deal. You don't have to have a May election cycle. Just curious.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kinski, that is a good option. I thought about bumping up the primary to the first week of August, the first Tuesday. And then if a primary or a runoff is necessary, then having it 3 weeks later, because I noticed some other states can turn those things around in about 3 weeks. The average is about 8 to 10 weeks for a runoff. I'd like to shorten that up if possible. If there's not any federal requirements that preclude us from doing so. I know there's the hurdle with the absentee military ballots, the overseas ballots. I think you need 45 days for those. I think the states that get around that do some sort of a ranked choice voting just for those military ballots. So when they send them off, they say, give us your top 3 or 4 choices. And then they look at those when those come in. If the race is close, then I think that's how they get around that. But it's certainly a possibility. I like that idea. I would prefer to stay in July and August, June if necessary, but July, August, and then if we have to go into September for a runoff, I think that still gives us time on the general election side. So.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Vice President.
I kind of like May. That way I figure if I lost, I go fishing on something.
Well, that's, you know, that's the way I always felt. If I'm going to get beat, I want to get beat early so I have my summer.
So there's plenty of options, Mr. Chairman, on the dates, and I was looking forward to the committee, the whole debate, to see what the body wants and what the body feels is the sweet spot for the dates, because we don't have a lot of flexibility, it sounds like, with dates. It's either May to June, July, August, somewhere in there, and then we've got to figure out how to make it happen.
All right, well, if there's no more questions, we'll see if there's any public comment on this. And why don't you go introduce your other team members to us?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. To my left is my oldest daughter, Alyssa, and then my youngest daughter, Holly. They're down here on spring break helping Dad out, so.
Well, that's really nice of them.
Poor kids.
Mr. Chairman, girls, I'm glad you're here. Your dad needs all the help he can.
Don't we all?
Amen.
Mary Langford, welcome. We're on, what do you have to help us with Senate File 145?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, and members of Appropriations. I'm Mary Langford, and I have the honor of representing the Wyoming County Clerks Association. A few things that you probably would need to know here. I have a little bit of a prepared statement for you, and then I'd like to respond to Senator Beitman's concerns about timing and that type of thing. Currently,
if Ms. Langford, the only thing most of that was just to get a general background. This is what we're only talking about, and here is the appropriation. We have no other ability to change anything in the bill other than deal with the appropriations. So you can kind of target your comments towards that, if you would, please.
Okay, I'll talk about the money then, sir. Currently, the administration of elections in Wyoming is paid for by its 23 counties. The estimated cost of a runoff election is $1.1 million based on information provided by the county clerks for the 2020 primary election. It is anticipated that the addition of an election will require additional staffing as county clerks are working on county budgets during the second quarter of the calendar year. As you know, counties are suffering from the same budget issues as the state of Wyoming. And in the appropriation that was proposed by the standing committee of $1.5 million, it also included another $185,000 for the Secretary of State's office to provide the requirements for the Wild Ridge system, as well as whatever materials they needed for their election. Our $1.1 million that we're talking about is the basic cost of doing an election. It's the printing of the ballots. It is the staffing of the polling places. It's the materials that are required to do the election, the pens and the pencils, the basic stuff, to pay the election judges, to provide their training, to provide their supplies that they need for that election. And there's a basic cost. Doesn't matter really how much information you have on a ballot if you're running one race or if you are running 10 races, you still have a basic cost of that printing and that work to do that election. So we don't see that changing based upon the fact that you change what kind of races that you're going to have here. One of the big concerns that we had is the fact that redistricting and what that that effect has on the election and being able to do this in 2022. But the basic cost of election, we don't see changing if you change what the races are. It will still be 1.1 million as far as the counties are concerned. The total appropriation again being $1.5 million that was put on by the standing committee. And I hope that answers your questions, and I'm very happy to stand for any questions too.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Langford. Any questions for Ms. Langford? Thank you very much. We appreciate your helping us out tonight.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more thing to tell you, is that this would come every election year. It isn't going to be a one-time expenditure. It will come every election year. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, I guess one quick question for you. Do you see this money is deposited in like the in the state auditor's account? And then if the Secretary if the Secretary of State wants it, that he or she then would distribute it to the counties if there is a runoff election?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if that's very clear. The amendment, I believe, anticipated that the money would be placed with the Secretary of State's office and administered through them to the counties. But that's one of the things that's not very clear.
Okay. Thank you. Any other? All right. Is there anybody else that in the room to speak on this bill? Karen? All right. Then Senator Biteman, do you have any other comments or thoughts?
Just curious on the timing, like you mentioned, the timing of the appropriation running up to the end of the fiscal year. Does this need to be appropriated for this fiscal year, or does this need to be done in the next biennium? I'm not sure.
Well, I guess it kind of depends on how the bill comes out.
Okay.
But yeah, I think you need to have, a lot of the costs, even if you're running it in June or even if you're running in July, a lot of the costs are going to be incurred prior to the end of the fiscal year. So anyway, all right. We'll go ahead, and if there's not anything else, we'll go ahead and close off public comment. Members, what's your pleasure?
I've got a question. Procedural
Okay.
question. We have the bill in front of us and we have a proposed standing committee amendment. So what would we do if we impacted the appropriation in the standing committee amendment? Would we move to impact that another amendment to change the appropriation?
You'd delete the amendment to the appropriate line, and then you'd have our language. If we were going to change,
I'd say move the bill.
Okay, the bill's been moved by Senator Kinski and seconded by Senator Steinmetz.
And then I would further move that the proposed standing committee amendment with a $1.5 million appropriation, that we reduce that by half. And then I think you had some idea as to where the money would be parked in the event it was needed, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'm trying to find the amendment here. I don't think the amendment addresses where the money goes and how it gets dispensed. Just says, it says it from the general fund to the Secretary of State. Yeah, it does say the Secretary of State.
Does it have language in there about not appropriated for any other purpose? If it's not expended, shall revert?
Not be transferred, expended for any other purpose, and any unexpended obligation remaining shall revert.
Okay,
Yep.
so we have that. So, yeah, so your motion is just simply to cut the appropriation in half?
Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
Second.
And a motion, a second, discussion? Now, we'll see. We may be back. She makes a good point that you have to do the same, pretty much the same work and the same costs, regardless of whether you have 5 or whether you have legislators in it. But
Well, the other thing, Mr. Chairman, and I don't know how we'd handle that in the amendment, but if this thing is amended to make it 2023 instead of 2022, we've got time to gather more accurate cost information, in which case no appropriation would be needed. But we can handle that on the
Okay.
floor.
any further discussion on the proposed amendment? Ready? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Amendment carries. All right, so you've got that, Karen. We're just changing the number. Okay. We'll see how it goes. We may have to change that by the end of the bill, or when it goes to our good friends on the other side, they can do that too. Yeah, let's do a roll call on the bill.
Thank you. On Senate File 145 as amended, Senator Guru. Senator Hicks.
Aye.
Senator Kinski.
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz. Chairman Perkins.
No.
4 ayes, 1 no.
All right. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill
He's now-
76.
He's now officially older than dirt.
Are you here to present on 76?
Are you older than he is?
Alderman Driscoll, Landon, Steinmetz.
Steinmetz is on this one. Steinmetz is on this. Senate File 76.
Uniform statewide payment process. You're gonna floor me.
Yeah. That's what you get for answering a co-sponsor request.
It'll teach you to put your name on those things. Well, they know you were up there on appropriations. They bailed.
I don't.
Uniform.
Well, no, wait a minute. Fiscal note says no significant fiscal personnel impact. Did the House add something that involves spending?
Well, this is we're a committee, this is first referral.
Oh.
We're the
Oh,
first referral
okay.
on this bill.
So there is,
Well,
They see a Nicholas amendment.
Mr. Chairman, for your convenience, you have the original bill, the amendments that were adopted by the House, and the engrossed bill.
okay.
I thought when I signed on to this, it's just making the payment system uniform so they can take all sorts of payments and
This is just, they're just coming back.
rather than one department taking this and the other one that, and they could get better rates on their fees by doing it that way. So that is my remembrance of why I signed on to the bill. Mhm.
Is this credit card processing? Is this credit card
Mhm.
processing?
Yes, yes, it is.
Yeah, it's just credit
Yeah,
card
better
fees.
credit card.
So we're going to consolidate our purchasing power.
Yeah.
Okay.
And reduce our fees.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we, do you know who's the prime sponsor in the Senate by chance?
In the Senate, I don't know.
Well, and why don't we just lay this back and
Okay.
and then we can get Senator Baldwin or Senator Driscoll or somebody up here, and then we can also give Representative Brown a chance to get up here and tell us about it. We're not,
He's down in the White House.
well, we can lay it back. I mean, what's that?
Okay.
We can lay it back and do it. We meet every day, so it's not that big of a deal. All right, so that, we'll go ahead and lay that one back. So give the prime sponsor a chance to get up and talk to us. And then we'll go ahead and go look at House Bill 121, state funded capital construction. Hey, I kind of recognize this bill.
I don't.
What happened to our good little appropriations committee bill?
So Senator Nicholas, if you're here, do you want us to run through your amendments? Why don't you go ahead and run through your
I
amendments?
need to see it.
Oh, sure, there you go.
But basically, if you recall, this is the bill that we said we wouldn't.
Go, you need to turn
Yeah.
on your mic.
Well, you would take it out and do your thing and send it over to us and we'll do our thing.
We just didn't realize your thing was that big. Oh, I think you did.
Okay.
Go ahead, Senator Nicholas.
You bet.
Well,
So,
are we looking at I've actually got the amendments themselves here.
And that's what Senator Nicholas has. So,
That'd be easiest just to go through the amendments, I think.
so Bob, did you want to take that, you want to just take it through really quick?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. As I'm working
Excuse me,
through it.
Representative Chairman Nicholas, would you like to take us through that?
So going to the amend, and I'm just going, the first one is the capital square preservation account. If you recall,
Okay.
originally, like 2 years ago, that was 4.5 million. Then we did not have it. And then last year it was 4.5 million. It went down, I believe, from motions from Senator Hicks down to 2 million, but then that bill did not pass out. We didn't have a CapCon bill. What we put in was the original 4.5 million that came out of this body from the JAC last January. The 4.5 million is the list. Actually, there's a list now that is roughly 8.5 million. But a lot of that is stuff that can just wait. But so it's for the wayfinding, it's for some of the shades, for particularly like this room. It's for the interpretive center. It's just a compendium of that same list that we had before that was the 4.5 million. So we just put that amount back in. And the next part,
That gets us down through, Mr. Chairman, if I may, that gets us down through page 1.
line 13.
And now we're on page 2, I guess it'd be the next one, territorial prison.
Right, and if you recall this, that was a motion from, that was originally in the Capcom bill, it was a motion from your body that removed that in order, and I don't know what the justification was, other than you just wanted to save money because we didn't have money. So we just put that back in. Next one. This is the major change that we did. We put 12 million in for community college capital construction, and we put 12 million for UW capital construction, designated for the UW Law School. The 12 million for community colleges, we said we didn't prioritize. If you recall, there were 4 projects in the bill that were approved, and we just said the most, we would turn it over to the commission and do the projects that are shovel ready and have the matching dollars so that the construction could commence immediately when this bill passes. So we would catch this construction season.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Vice President.
Representative Nichols, do you remember what the total cost of those 4 were estimated at? And I know there's 12 million and the way it's structured is the first come, first served if you're ready to go. But what was the total request for those 4 projects?
All right, okay, so I've got, yeah, so the Jackson Outreach Center was 17 million. So that's with matching funds, total dollars.
So that's a 1-to-1 match, so it would have been
Correct.
8.5.
Northwest College Student Center, the total price tag was 23 million. And the LCCC rack is 20 million.
What about NWCC construction?
NWCC construction was 9 million.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can follow up on that,
Sure.
do we have a ranking list already from SBC that they've looked at these so we know where they're at in the process?
Mr. Chairman. Point of order. Senator Hicks, hold this microphone closer. We're just not picking him up over here. So it's not going out to the greater family.
My recollection that this list is the ranking list.
Mr. Chairman, what was that?
Is that right?
May I help? May I offer?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Between the State Building Commission and the Community College Commission, they have a ranking list that does both priority in terms of what they just ranked out priority. We think this is the best project, but they also have another list that indicates who has the most match ready and who is closest to being what I would describe as shovel ready. So all of those necessary items to make sure we could get projects done as quick as possible the lists are there and available.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Keep
just
going,
just
yeah.
to follow up, can we get that list? If they already have that list, I'm just curious, what I'm trying to figure out is there's $12 million appropriation here, and almost any one of these projects could eat up. You're not going to do 2 of them. You're only going to get 1, unless somebody comes up with some other match. So if we know that there's already somebody at the front of the line, why wouldn't we just fund that? So can we get that list from SBC? Or, who is at the front of the line?
They didn't share Mr. Chairman, they didn't share the list with us. They just informed us that it was able to be created and it was available. I have not seen it to know which one's closest.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, before we go to Mr. Buckholz, I just want to make sure, Representative Walters, I'm trying to understand. The Wyoming Community College Commission has a priority list. The State Building Commission has a priority list. And then one agency has yet another list that says, here's how much match each project has and how close they are to being shovel ready. Which agency has that third list?
Mr. Chairman, I believe it's a combination between the Building Commission and the Community College Commission as they work through these projects collectively. The Community College Commission, the process is they submit their list of projects in a prioritization to the SBC about July of each year. And the SBC accepts or rejects those projects. And so then they come to the legislature in the same order as what they have been presented to the SBC.
So, Mr. Chairman, then there's one list consolidated between the two agencies that incorporates their priority and who has the match and who's ready to go?
Mr. Chairman, not typically. Typically, they have the priority list, and that's all that's of concern because we're going to fund for the last, I don't know how many years, 20 years or more, we have funded half of the projects, and they would bring us a list and we would fund half, they would fund half. And so there was just a simple priority list that came from the Community College Commission. With this amendment and what the House Appropriations was proposing to do was then had asked them to go back and tell us of the projects on your priority list, which are these 4 that are before us today, which ones of those 4 are the most available to be completed in the quickest amount of time, meaning who has the most money available and who has the most completed set of plans. And when we asked that question, collectively, they said they could put that information together.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Vice
Follow
President.
up on that. If that's the case, and we know what the proposed costs were, where did the 12 million come from? Because it's not enough to fund 2 projects. If you go through the list, the very most it could fund in one case, so NWC Student Centers, 11.5 million would eat all of that up. So how did we come up with the number of $12 million? Because it wouldn't fund more than one and maybe a little piece of the other, but with the one-to-one requirement, it still couldn't be constructed.
So I'll take that question. It came up in 2 different ways. Number one is that we wanted to, whatever we did for the for the University of Wyoming, we wanted to match for community colleges, so we kind of treat them equally. Number 2, our position was that we had to find a number that we thought we could afford, and between the community colleges, the 2 top projects, if they can come up with additional funding and we can fund 2, that would be up to them. If they can't, then we'll just take the first one and the remainder will just go into the kitty for the next project to come up, and we'll see next January.
Okay, we have Mr. Buckles here who might be able to put a finer point on some of this. What, if anything else from you, Mr. Chairman, or you, Representative Walters? Mr. Buckles, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Larry Buckholz, CFO at Community College Commission. What Representative Walters just said is all factually correct. However, the list of the current projects in this bill are not the current priority of the commission or the State Building Commission, the Community College Commission or the State Building Commission. The correct order, and I can give you the list, but I'll just tell you since there's only 4. Number 1 is the Jackson Outreach. Number 2 is the Northwest College Student Center. Number 3 is the LCCC RAC. And number 4 is the Northern Wyoming Community College District Construction Technology Building.
Well, you confused me. I thought you said they weren't in the list, but that's exactly what the list is. So I didn't quite understand.
My mistake.
I'm just,
My mistake, yes.
I get confused easily.
Obviously, I'm in the same boat you are. So yeah, the way they're listed in the bill, Mr. Chairman, is the correct priority as adopted by the commission and as adopted by the State Building Commission. However,
Okay, go ahead.
with the footnote that's on this on this appropriation, it's going to cause us to reprioritize those based on all of the things that Chairman Nicholas just talked about. Shovel ready, matching dollars, construction documents ready to go. So we're going to have to go and reprioritize that list based on that criteria. And that has not been done yet, and that list does not exist yet.
Okay, so Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, along those lines then, Larry, how long do you anticipate that would take for the SBC and the commission to get together, go through all of these to review the, what's shovel ready, what design phase, who's got permits in play, all of those issues that have to be resolved? What's a reasonable time frame for all of that to happen?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, Senator Hicks, we would be able to complete that right after this bill was signed. If this bill passes, we'd be able to sit down with the state construction department and sit down with the 4 colleges that have projects in the mix and actually get the status of every single one of those criteria that are in the footnote to be able to reprioritize how we might allocate that money out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Buchholz. Any other questions for Mr. Buchholz? Mr. Buchholz, anything else for us that you can think of?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else is there anyone else that looks like they're related to a community college? Or if you can even tell, Karen?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Caldwell's on, but she was just going to backstop me.
I have also Erin Taylor from the Community College Trustees.
Okay, why don't anybody, we're looking for anybody who wants to speak at least on the community college portion right now. Good morning, Ms. Taylor, or afternoon, Ms. Taylor. How are you?
I think it's good evening, Mr. Chairman. Happy to be here with you virtually. And I just wanted to speak briefly. My name is Erin Taylor. I'm the Executive Director of the Wyoming Community College Trustees Association. And just wanted to be here. You, of course, know the community colleges support the capital construction projects. It's most certainly a way to keep folks working in our communities. And for many of these projects, it definitely ties into the college's ability to continue to deliver the high quality programming that we know they offer in their communities. So I don't have much to offer. We support these very strongly and appreciate any support that this committee can give to these projects.
I didn't think about this before, Erin, but just out of curiosity, I mean, with the new America Recovers Act coming out, I think that there's $300 million for construction or something like that. And I'm not sure how that applies, but my question, Erin, is there any money that you're aware of that's coming out of the ARA that's going to be available for construction projects at colleges or universities?
Mr. Chairman, that's a great question. I personally do not know the answer to that, and I would defer to the Community College Commission because I know we're keeping an eye on any bits of new, restrictions that might loosen with these new dollars that are coming. But it looks like Larry's ready to pipe in, so I defer to call a friend on that one if I can.
Okay, you phone a friend, and it's nice to know that Mr. Buchholz is your friend. Larry, what do you got to help us with?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Taylor. I've read the bill and I've seen the allocations that are coming to the states, but what actual sideboards the U.S. Treasury Department is going to put on it, we're not aware of yet. So we don't know if that capital improvement allocation that's coming to the states is going to have sideboards that they have to be healthcare related or, something in the health medical industry to prepare a state should something like this happen again. So we don't know. We don't know what those sideboards might be on that allocation to the state of Wyoming.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Erin, anything else for us?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything else. We're happy to see the 12 million put in there. Of course, we'd love to see all of the projects funded. So if the Senate's so inclined to bump that up, we'd sure be happy with that.
Well, thank you for that, Erin. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anyone else that has their hand up, Karen? Okay. Mr. Representative Walters or Chairman Nicholas, anything else?
You want to go through the rest of the bill?
Yeah, well, yeah, but I just out of curiosity, as I think about that, we might be thinking about a tweak on, we've got private funds, but if there's other funds that are available that come out through this, there's capital construction dollars. And we don't know what the guidance is going to be, but we may want to, we may be able to solve that later on at the special session or, but if there's shovel-ready projects and some of that's available, anyway, think about that.
I would concur with that. And one of the things that we have to be careful about with the new dollars is that it can't be used to replace budget reductions. So we have to be careful about when we cut and how we cut, both surgically.
I'm not talking about cutting these projects, but as you
what
look
I mean,
at.
what I meant to say
we've
is
got another that
if we cut it because we don't have the funds, then we can't use certain dollars to replace it. And we've got LSO working on this right now and this carries over both to the general fund dollars and it's a pretty big question. But it also then, if there are ways that we can replace current funds, is it better to cut now or so that we can replace it, or if that doesn't qualify, or do we need to keep our funds we need to fund more things and come back and do the replacement and
Right.
Where we get the maximum dollars.
And I think the big answer is you can't use these to cut taxes has been the big thing. You
Right.
can't use this money to cut taxes. But I mean, just as we look in here, we'd have down here, we did the authorization in the original bill on private funds. And I'm just thinking that might be a little bit too restrictive if we move forward so that you could augment this and there might be a way to get one or more of these projects, additional projects funded with some of those dollars if it's available. That's my only thought there for right now.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Well, just to clarify and following up on that conversation, wouldn't it be better to just cut out the 4 CC projects and the College of Law from this bill entirely so that if we do circle back with the CARES Act COVID relief round, whatever the next round is called, that it does not appear that we're swapping funds out?
Well, right now, the bill is we're not swapping funds because the only thing we've authorized is outside the 12 is private funds. And so that's not a swap. We're just saying that PR is all private funds. So I can't see how that.
One we just want to do is add language and if there's other funding available.
Yeah, I just think about that. We don't have to necessarily figure that out right now, but just something before it gets through our side, we need to make sure, see if we can come up with a good idea how to address that.
There is $109 million that's coming to the state for infrastructure under the ARP right now, whatever that is.
Whatever that means. So, we'll get another bite at that apple sometime later. So anything else? We're going to move on just to the next part, which is
Mr. Chairman,
but go ahead.
if I could follow up on your comment, PR is typically used, yes, it says private revenue, but it's also typically been used to discuss all other revenue outside of state revenue. So I think even leaving PR in there still would allow us to use that other, just because that's how we've typically categorized anything that wasn't state revenue.
We'll just double check and be sure. Okay, so then I think you go ahead, and I think the next one is about the only next change is the 12 million for the UW. Or is it okay? Which is just, it's just straightforward. It's just
We did do one other change, just so you understand everything that we did on line 24.
On which page?
Page 5.
Okay.
So this is the mechanical room. We took it out of SIPA, we took it away from SIPA and then put it and used LSRA dollars. And the reason we did that is because with the House amendments, SIPA was fully expended. And so we had to add a few more dollars back in to cover the overages. It's around $6 million difference.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator, go ahead, Mr. Vice Chairman.
I'm looking at the big House amendment. And could you tell me in this amendment where that swap of LISRA for SIPA is?
It's just on page on line 24 on page 5, see 11,740,000.
No, in the amendment itself, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at the amendment itself.
I don't,
I don't see
loaned
where
my
that
amendment
swap
to
out
someone else. Can I
took
see if I
place.
can?
No footnote there.
Maybe it's in this maybe it's in the third reading amendment.
I think that's probably right, because I noticed that you don't have the amendment.
Page 4, line 22,
Should just be
delete S13, insert S10.
That's it.
So you spent up all the SIPA, so you had to take it out of the LISRA.
We appropriate all SIPA. Because we knew Larry wanted to get rid of it.
Mr. Chairman, I looked just here not too long ago on the Senate side, we still have about
We said SIPA money
14
left
million
on
in
the Senate
SIPA.
side.
There's plenty of money.
Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate you pointing that out. So then, now, does that get us, so page 6, I don't look like page 6 got,
I'm on page 3 of the big amendment, which is now we're back to Capitol Square preservation.
So the next major item is page 8. That's the 12 million for the UW Law School.
yeah, so on page 8, line
6.
6, line 7.
Yep.
Line 7, there's there's $12 million from SIPA for the college, for almost not quite half the College of Law. So there's that change. Okay. Then,
There's also a footnote on that has to be 1-to-1 matching.
go ahead.
And the same for the community colleges.
Could you pull that mic just a little bit closer?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Both the community colleges and the UW ones require 1-to-1 matching for the projects.
Mr. Chairman. So,
Go ahead, Senator
thank
Grew.
you. So I see on page 8 how that works. 13 million, for private funds, and then $12 million from SIPA funds. So go back then to the page 5. And how does that track for those other projects, the community college project? How you said it tracks the same way. How does it track? I'm just having trouble.
Mr. Chairman, it tracks through the footnote, which is the little baby number 2 that you'll see behind each of those community college projects.
All right.
So on lines 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, right after it says what school it is, there's a little baby 2.
Right. Yeah.
Then that is the footnote that says for every dollar they receive of state funds, it'll have to be matched on a 1-to-1 ratio from private sources. And that footnote shows up on page 6, line 12 of the bill. And because of the other footnote that is on page 6 for the community colleges that discusses they'll be the shovel ready, match ready, et cetera, that we discussed a few minutes ago, we don't show it like we do typically where it would say if it was a $10 million project, it would be 5 state SIPA, for example, 5 private revenue, because we don't know which of those projects the community college group will decide.
So that's, so 5, so footnote 2, no, footnote, excuse me, it's footnote
6.
5 and 6. So footnotes 5 and 6 are new. And so that's just that's the thing where they got to prioritize on basically the factors that you've got enumerated there. Design, earliest established construction timeline, timelines to proceed, and available matching funds. And then you have 6A, which is the match requirement for those 4 projects.
And so what we didn't want to do is pick winners and losers by somebody's favorite. So we picked the one that's the most ready to get done.
Yeah, it's up to them to come back, and whatever one they do, they have the right to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Okay. And College of Law and footnotes 1 and 2 go with the College of Law. Or footnote 2 goes with the College of Law. That's new. Okay. And then 2 also then requires the match.
Correct.
Okay. Acceptance of gift. Looks the same. Previous CC authorization looks this.
That's old.
Yeah,
It's the
that's
same.
old.
Yeah.
The CWC's already,
Yeah, I
that's
think-
old. Reappropriation of McGinney and Lander Life Resource Center is old.
I think the next,
Dollars have already been there.
the next changes are on page 15 in the original bill, I believe. Is that right?
Correct.
So the footnote A in the first amendment has now been expanded to have 3 Romanettes.
That just carries on. Extends that. And that just carries on the task force.
That's that Casper task force.
Correct.
And then,
No, it says capital, the headline is capital square preservation.
Yeah,
oh, excuse me,
page
that's the
17 now.
Capital Square.
Mhm.
And that you've seen before. It's just a question of how much funding is in it.
And yeah, and then you got to have that. You need that if you're gonna, you need that if we're gonna do the capital square preservation.
Correct. And then the main change was in the third reading amendment, it struck out on page 20, I think it was lines 3 through 14 was struck out. That's my recollection.
Yeah, and then there's the appropriation, the 4.5 million in C on page 19. Yeah.
Line,
Okay, so they didn't have the stricken part.
Then put it into the state construction department, and then where did the other $250,000 go?
So it goes into a fund that is controlled by state construction because they do the work. They retain the people to do the work. And basically, there's just $250,000 for other projects that are not listed on here. Like I said, the list is actually 8.5 million right now for other projects that some point in time, if we choose to do it, need to be done for the capital.
Need to fix the vent above the house
Yeah.
chamber.
So just to kind of round out, the Senate added, more dollars to the community colleges and in the budget bill. We kind of took a different approach. Our approach was, well, let's add the dollars for one-time spending versus adding it back into their budgets fully, as you did for community colleges. And part of the reason that we did that is because the dollars that are available as presented as we presented on the floor and from January CROIG are substantially different now than they were then. Just for an example, the general fund at that time had $16 million in it. Right now it has, if you add general fund and BRA, it has over $55 million in it. But those are dollars in the bank. If the LISR right now, it's pretty certain we're going to get at least 90 million tip this year, and we'll probably get 90 million tip next year because that's the 1.25% over the 2.75%. That's 180 million, and it's likely we're going to then fill back up the LISR, and if it stays on the current trend, that fund could go up to 1.5 billion. And so we have the 130 million in OFSTA. If you look at what was that was projected that the next biennium we are at a $27 million shortfall. In the January CREG, that now is gone. And now it's $15 to $30 million balance. I know it's a balanced budget plus money. Plus we've done additional cuts since then Plus, we're going to lose the next biennium. We'll gain 26 million of biennium because of the transfer of the dollars of funding for tourism will be gone out of our general budget. And so overall, we just said, we're not as poor as we were in January. We're just not. And so it was reasonable to us to expend dollars on one-time dollars for capital construction, because that's kind of where the SIPA dollars are directed. And we haven't even talked about what we're likely going to have in unrealized gains at the end of this year, but we know there are going to be some, unless there's a major crash between now and July, which is highly unlikely. And so that was just kind of our philosophy as we presented it to the floor on our side.
Okay, thank you. Representative Walters, anything to add?
Thank you for your consideration, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks for taking us through. Take us through what you guys did. Appreciate it. It's helpful.
So while you guys take the minds of our minutes, we got to go down.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll give it the consideration.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, before they take off,
Sure.
I just want to make sure I understand this dialogue that you and Bob had going about this. APAA, what's the next big trough?
American Restoration.
America
You've got
Recovers Act.
LSO working
Recovery
on language. Would that be for this bill or would that be for the special session?
So we don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Because we need to know exactly what the language is and how we do it. In discussions I had today, we may want to do something before we get out of here, both with this, maybe it could be with CapCon, it could even be with the budget. And so my recommendation to the leadership today was there ought to be a joint leadership meeting to sit down and have this discussion so that both sides understand what the potentials are and what the risks are on the actions that you've done on the budget and what we've done on the budget, so that we make educated decisions.
So
And it may well be that we might not want to pass a budget and do that on the special session, because that may impact how and where those dollars can go. I mean, these are big questions that we got to find the answers to. So.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, is staff also looking at that great big green shovel worth of money that's going to the local governments, because there's 100 million in play there.
750 million.
It's 171. Yeah.
171.
But the answer is what we're looking at it, but it is distributed in such a different way than we can manage. And as most of us know, county's been hit harder than in a lot of ways than states have, the state government has. And so the answer is we have chose to leave that alone, but it's always, I think you have to recognize it and you have to consider it and understand the ramifications on both sides.
And a similar question for the money that's going directly to education out of that. Is staff looking at that as well?
We have looked at it, but I think that you'd be better suited to answer that question.
I think it's still, Mr. Chairman, I think it's still up in the air of trying to find out from Treasury what their final guidance is going to be for us to make too many decisions at this point. Some of those dollars will be going to education regardless of any action we take, because the feds have decided how they want it spent, and that's how it'll go. We won't have any say in it. Some of it may come through the state. But again, Treasury is coming up with many of those rules at this time, and
One of the things
it's a little premature.
One of the things we are looking at is, depending on how, before we come out with an education funding bill, we need to evaluate that to see if we can situate it to maximize using some of those dollars for education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I think that's good. My guess is that we'll jump from one foot to the other as we wait for Treasury guidance. And Treasury guidance will be just like it was last time. They'll pick a few phrases out of the existing statute and say, go forth and don't screw it up.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Senator Drew.
Sorry, just a quick question for the good co-chair. We talked about a lot of things we don't know, federal funds and all this stuff, but I got a question that maybe you do know. I know the law college is near and dear to your heart as a project. How much money has been raised privately for that project up to this point? Do you have any idea?
I do. Right now, there are commitments just over 6 million. But I know that they've gone back to the trough, and there's a good potential of more. So,
Thank you. Thanks.
and back when, this was before the crash that we had, UW had basically was going to cover the remainder of it. It wasn't raised. I don't know that they can do that now. That's because obviously they've lost 45 plus 16 million. So.
And we just got started.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else waiting to testify?
Is anybody else waiting to testify on this bill? All right. What's your pleasure with the bill, members?
Move the bill.
I'll second it. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'd move, and this will make it easier on staff, that I would move that staff prepare an amendment to strip HB 121 HS 001.01 and H 3001, the two House amendments to this bill, and restore it to the way it was when we left JAC.
okay. Discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. I'm a no on that one too, but okay, let's go ahead on the bill.
On House Bill 121 as amended, Senator Grew. Senator Hicks. Senator Kinski.
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz. Chairman Perkins.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay. That's it. Thanks. I guess we go tomorrow. We go tomorrow at noon. Tomorrow at noon, right, Karen? Okay, tomorrow at noon.
So, well, I just want to make sure so Karen, do you have sufficient direction on what you're going to ask for an amendment, or do I need to do that?
My understanding is those 2 amendments that I sent to you, I am going to delete those amendments from the bill, and that is the amendment that the committee is making.
Okay.